Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum and I am here today on Malta bringing you a cool gun video through the generous invitation of the Association of Maltese Arms Collectors and Shooters. A bunch of very cool people who put together a selection of very interesting firearms for us to take a look at. So today we have a little bit of a discussion about a dilemma that collectors sometimes have. So some collectors are really focused on condition of guns, and what they really want to see is a gun that's quite old but looks exactly like it came out of the factory. And I totally understand that. The downside to me is if a gun looks like it just came out of the factory, it probably hasn't been anywhere or done anything or really participated in any really interesting history. Because if it had, it would have gotten used and worn and scratched and dented. And so on the opposite end of the people who are particularly interested in condition are the people who are particularly interested in the history of a gun and where a particular gun may have been and what it was involved in. And personally, I find myself in the middle but leaning towards the historical side. So when I see a gun not so much like this beautiful MP40, but one more like this really pretty ratty looking MP40, I find this one really interesting. And that's because of where this one has been and what it's done. Now, we don't know entirely. We don't have any definitive documented evidence of where this gun came from, but we can infer a number of things just from looking at it. First off, this originally came out of a German gun collection where it was for quite some time. So this is not a recently created weapon. If we take a look at the finish, it's all pretty heavily worn, it's all evenly worn, the gun is all matching, and it has this thing hanging off the side. This is a brass catching bag, and best case, what we can determine from looking at all of the evidence together, this is something that was put together by Russian or Ukrainian partisans during World War II. Let me show you up close. So, looking at this up a little more closely, what we have here is a cloth bag that is mounted onto a little metal shell here. There is a spring which connects this shell to the bottom of the magwell, and this just sits inside the magwell, so pretty crude. This is, I really can't picture this being a German field conversion, which is one of the conceivable explanations, like do this to if you're going to be firing from a vehicle to prevent the cases from bouncing around, but I can't see that really being the case in this one. Now, once that spring is off, then this brass catcher folds up like that, which would allow you to empty the bag. This cloth is very much of a Russian pattern, Russian style. We can take a look at the stitching, sort of stitching used to tie the cloth onto the metal portion there. And there you go. So when this fires, casings are going to just bounce off the metal into the bag and be collected nicely. And for the right sort of partisan unit, that could be particularly useful to not leave any shell casings as evidence that they were around. In addition, the muzzle nut is missing off this gun, which probably means that it's just missing the muzzle nut. However, it is conceivable that that was taken off because someone was using a suppressor or a silencer of some type on this gun, which would go pretty well with the brass catcher. Obviously, again, there's no actual evidence to support that. There's not really any evidence that would speak against it. That's one of the things of a lot of guns that show quite a lot of history to their use, is often we don't know exactly where they were or how they were used. We have to extrapolate from what we can see. I can point out this is a BNZ 1943 gun. Serial number is 8242. And we have that serial number here as well. It's a little hard to make out. The finish is pretty well worn, but 8242 there. This is a matching gun. And there it is again on the receiver. So it is an all-matching gun. As you can see from the finish, this is a gun that was hidden somewhere. This spent I think it's a safe assumption to make that this spent a substantial amount of time underground. And it got rusty and it was cleaned up, and that's what resulted in this really patchy level of, or lack of, finish. Here's the actual attachment of the brass catcher. You can see there's this hinged piece of metal right there that has been very crudely welded onto the top of the receiver tube of the gun. So for someone who's interested particularly in the Eastern Front of World War II, which really is by itself like the greatest single armed conflict in human history, I think this is a particularly fascinating gun. Just a really cool story, and the handmade elements to it I really enjoy seeing. Well, fortunately, the gun collecting world is plenty big enough to accommodate both groups of people. The people who really like guns that have been there and done that and seen hard service lives, and the guns that look as pristine as the day they came out of the factory. So, in fact, the two groups probably aren't going to overlap all that much in the guns that they are looking for. So, all the better for a happy medium. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed this little look at what is probably a Ukrainian or Russian partisans captured MP40. If you did enjoy seeing this sort of thing on the internet, please do consider supporting me directly through ForgottenWeapons.com or through Patreon. It is your support as viewers that makes it possible for me to come to a place like Malta here and bring you cool guns like this one. Thanks for watching.